Story 1. This happened to me. I'm Arthur, a traveling salesman. A brutal storm raged, swallowing the highway. I desperately needed shelter, any shelter. My old sedan hydroplaned. Miles from anywhere, a flickering neon sign appeared through the deluge. Motel, a beacon in the driving rain. It was desolate, paint peeling, the sign broken, but it was a roof. I pulled into the empty lot, wind howling around the car like a hungry beast. The lobby was dim, smelling of dust and stale cigarettes. A tired clerk slid a key across. Room 13, he rasped, barely visible behind the grimy counter. 13, a classic, key cold in hand, I trudged down a dimly lit corridor. Floorboards creaked under my weary weight, the silence oppressive. The door to room 13 groaned open. Inside, it was a time capsule. Musty air, faded wallpaper, and a single flickering fluorescent bulb cast an eerie glow. A worn, stained armchair sat in the corner. The bed looked like it hadn't seen a new mattress in decades. I just needed sleep and escape from the storm. My gaze found the television, an ancient CRT set, a relic from another era. Its screen was dark, reflecting the gloomy room and my weary face. It sat on a warped dresser, an anachronism in a world of flat screens. I didn't care for TV, but its presence felt heavy, almost watchful. I tossed my bag onto the bed, the springs groaning in protest. The storm outside raged, a fitting soundtrack to this isolated, forgotten place. Exhaustion claimed me quickly. I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep, the storm's fury a distant drone. My body ached, my mind finally at peace. I awoke abruptly, a sudden flicker of light piercing the darkness. My eyes snapped open, disoriented. The room was no longer completely dark, a strange glow filling it. The television, it had turned itself on. A blizzard of white noise, pure static, filled the screen, accompanied by a low, hissing sound. My heart leaped. A jolt went through me. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even looked for a remote. I sat up, heart pounding, a cold dread beginning to seep in. I stumbled out of bed, fumbling for the plug. With a decisive yank, I pulled it from the wall. The screen went black. Silence returned, but not peace. "Just a power surge," I muttered, trying to calm myself. The storm was violent. Things like this happened. I tried to dismiss it, but a chill lingered. I lay back down, but sleep wouldn't come easily. My mind raced, replaying the sudden, eerie glow of the static. It felt wrong, deeply unsettling. Hours later, just as I was drifting off again, the TV flickered back to life. Unplugged, my breath hitched. This was impossible, a violation. This time, it wasn't static. For a brief, terrifying second, a grainy, sepia-toned image materialized. My childhood home, bathed in an unnatural light. The old porch swing, the peeling paint, a place I hadn't seen in decades. Then it vanished, replaced by the persistent, hissing static. My blood ran cold. Panic began to set in. I knew I hadn't plugged it back in. How was this happening? My rationalizations shattered, replaced by raw fear. It turned on again, this time a fleeting image of my high school locker combo, followed by a snippet of my grandmother humming a forgotten lullaby. The images were quick, distorted, like old film reels sped up. Moments from my past, things I'd forgotten. Who could possibly know these intimate details? A fragment of a conversation with my college roommate about a forgotten late-night study session. A specific, quiet whisper, a secret shared only between us. The sound wasn't coming from the speakers, not really. It felt like it resonated inside my skull, a chilling internal echo, a voice only I could hear. I tried to cover the TV with a thick Motel blanket. The fabric absorbed some light, but a faint, pulsing glow still seeped through, an unholy heartbeat. The muffled static still hissed, a constant, low-level hum that grated on my nerves. It was like a presence in the room, watching, waiting. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the whispered words, the specific sounds, still seemed to penetrate, faint but distinct, burrowing into my mind. This wasn't a power surge, this was personal, this was impossible. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum echoing the TV's pulse. The TV pulsed beneath the blanket, a malevolent heart beating in the darkness. I was trapped with it, the storm still raging outside, mirroring my internal chaos. The blanket was useless. The screen flickered again, revealing a scene from my college dorm. A lie I told, a betrayal that had haunted me for years. My stomach churned. It showed the exact moment, the look on my friend's face. How could it know? How could anything know these hidden truths? Then an image of an old office building, a spreadsheet, and a brief text overlay. Financial shortcut, Smith & Co., 2012. My past mistakes laid bare. I remembered a small, unethical move that had benefited me at someone else's expense. I'd buried that memory deep, but now it was resurrected. The screen flashed, showing my face, younger, contorted in fear. A moment of cowardice, a choice I regretted to this day, now public. A distorted, whispering voice finally broke through the static, seeping from the TV's old speakers, yet still echoing in my head. It was truly terrifying. "Did you think no one was watching, Arthur?" It rasped, a chilling, knowing tone. My blood ran cold, fear paralyzing me. The storm outside intensified, thunder cracking directly overhead, the wind rattling the flimsy window pane. It mirrored my internal terror perfectly. Every secret, every hidden shame laid bare on that glowing screen. I felt exposed, vulnerable, utterly condemned by an unseen entity. The air in the room grew heavy, oppressive. The TV wasn't just showing images, it was judging me, its presence suffocating, inescapable. The screen flickered violently, the images becoming more abstract, more terrifying. My future unfolding before me, a grim prophecy. A desolate road stretching into an endless horizon. A solitary figure, small and alone, walking away. It was me, a future of isolation. An empty house, windows dark, overgrown with weeds. A place where warmth and life had long since departed. My house, abandoned, decaying. Then a close-up, my own face, older, gaunt, eyes wide with a terror I recognized. A future consumed by fear, a living nightmare. A stark text overlay appeared, glowing red. "There's nowhere left to go, Arthur. It's already written. My fate sealed irrevocably." Driven to the brink of madness, I lunged. My hand closed around a heavy, cast-iron ashtray on the dresser, my only weapon. I raised it high, intending to smash the infernal machine, to silence its accusations, to destroy the source of my torment, once and for all. As I brought it down, the screen changed. It showed a horrifying, distorted reflection of my own face. Its eyes were black pits, staring back. The TV's speakers hissed, a chilling, guttural sound. "You can't break what's already broken, Arthur." The words echoed, cold and final. The room temperature plummeted, a sudden, icy chill. An unseen presence pressed in, suffocating me. I dropped the ashtray and fled, leaving everything behind. The broadcast plays on in my mind, every screen a terror, nowhere left to hide. Story 2, this happened to me. My partner, Alex, and I booked a last-minute stay at the Whispering Pines Motel for a weekend getaway. It was a charming, yet dated, roadside inn. Our room, #13, felt quaint, almost too perfect. The antique furniture and vintage decor suggested a bygone era, a deliberate step back in time. There was a strange, heavy silence in the room that I couldn't quite shake. It wasn't just quiet, it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. Despite the unsettling quiet, we tried to relax. We were tired from the drive and eager to start our weekend. I tried to convince myself it was just the old building settling. The room felt like it had secrets, though. A subtle chill lingered, even with the heating on. It was a feeling I couldn't quite place, but it settled deep in my bones. While unpacking, Alex lifted the dresser's felt lining. That's when we saw it, an ornate, tarnished brass key, half-hidden, glinting dully in the dim light. The key was heavy, cold to the touch. Its intricate design was unlike anything modern. It felt ancient, like it had a story to tell, a forgotten purpose. It definitely didn't look like our modern plastic key card. This key was from another time, another world almost. A shiver ran down my spine. Its peculiar, almost forgotten elegance was captivating. We both stared at it, a silent question hanging in the air. What did it unlock? A sense of ancient history clung to it, a weight of untold years. It felt significant, more than just a forgotten trinket. Curiosity, that dangerous human trait, quickly overrode any caution. We had to find its lock. We had to know what secret it guarded. We began our search, meticulously examining every inch of room #13. We checked drawers, cabinets, even behind paintings, our excitement growing. Behind a large, antique armoire, pushed snugly against the wall, we found it. A faint seam in the faded wallpaper, almost imperceptible. It was a hidden door, cleverly disguised, almost invisible to the casual eye. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The key slid into its lock with a soft, unnerving click. It was a sound that echoed in the heavy silence, sealing our fate. We hesitated, a moment of shared doubt. This felt wrong, like trespassing on something ancient and best left undisturbed, but the pull was too strong. With a deep breath, Alex turned the key. The lock mechanism groaned, a sound like an old bone breaking. We braced ourselves. The hidden door creaked open slowly, grudgingly, revealing not another room, but a narrow, dust-choked hallway. Darkness swallowed the light. It was eerily similar to the motel's main corridor, yet horribly decayed. Paint peeled, plaster cracked, and cobwebs hung like shrouds. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and something else metallic like old blood. It was a smell that made my stomach churn. This wasn't just an unused part of the motel, it was a ruin, a forgotten husk. A place that time had not only forgotten but actively destroyed. A chill, deeper than any cold air, permeated the space. It felt like the cold of a tomb, a place where life had long since departed. We ventured deeper, drawn by an irresistible, morbid curiosity. Each step echoed in the oppressive silence, amplifying our apprehension. The parallel room #13 was a mirror image of ours, but utterly ravaged. Furniture lay broken, covered in layers of dust and grime. Faint whispers began to surface from the silence. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but they grew clearer, more distinct. A woman crying, a man arguing, sounds that seemed to emanate from the very walls. It was disorienting, terrifyingly real yet distant. These were echoes of past tragedies replayed in an endless loop. This place was a repository of suffering, a dark memory preserved. We saw spectral figures then, not fully formed but translucent outlines of people. They moved through the decaying halls, oblivious to us. They were replaying mundane moments but with an underlying current of despair and fear. A couple arguing, a child crying silently. It was chilling to watch, like peering into a nightmare. We realized we were witnessing the motel's dark history, trapped in a loop. This wasn't just a building, it was a prison for lost souls, replaying their final moments forever. The realization hit us hard. As we ventured further into what would have been the parallel lobby, the scenes became clearer, more vivid, more terrifying. We saw a clear, vivid tableau, a young couple, terrified, trying desperately to escape a shadowy, menacing figure. They looked so real. The scene repeated, a horrifying loop of pursuit and silent screams. Their faces were etched with absolute, hopeless despair. Then I saw it, clutched in the spectral woman's hand, identical to ours, was that ornate brass key. My blood ran cold. We were witnessing their fate, or perhaps the fate of anyone who found the key. This wasn't just history, it was a prophecy. The realization hit us like a physical blow. This wasn't just a historical replay, it was a trap. We were next. We had to get out. Panic surged through me, raw and primal. Every fiber of my being screamed for escape. Alex grabbed my hand, his grip crushing. We fled back through the decaying halls, the whispers now feeling like taunts, the spectral figures like watchful predators. Bursting through the hidden door, we slammed it shut with all our might. The loud thud echoed, a desperate attempt to seal off the horror. We pushed the heavy armoire back into place, frantically, as if its weight could truly barricade the nightmare we just glimpsed. The pristine motel room now felt menacing, its quaintness a cruel facade. Every shadow seemed to hold a lurking terror. We checked out immediately, not bothering to pack properly, just grabbing our essentials. We didn't look back, not once. The memory, the chilling echoes, haunt me to this day. I'll never forget that night, the metallic smell, the silent screams. The certainty that the key is still there, waiting for someone else, is a cold, persistent dread. Another curious soul. I often wonder if we are now part of that liminal space, our fear replayed for future unlucky guests. Are we echoes now? Sometimes I hear the faint whispers, the distant cries. They follow me, a constant reminder of what we almost became. The motel still stands, I'm sure, charming and deceptive. A gateway to a horror that never ends, a history that repeats. The key is an invitation, a curse. It unlocks not just a door, but a terrifying reality, a fate woven into the motel's very fabric. And I know with a chilling certainty that somewhere someone else will find it, and their story will begin. Story 3. For years, my route took me past the roadside rest, a desolate motel. It was a familiar stop, a place where the hum of my rig faded into the quiet of the night. This happened to me. I'd seen countless rooms there, but room 12 always caught my eye. It was perpetually lit, a single, unblinking eye in the motel's dark facade. It was always empty, yet always on. My curiosity grew with each passing month. Why was that light never off? Was it a faulty switch, a forgotten lamp? The motel owner, old man Silas, was never one for small talk. I'd always chalked it up to some motel eccentricity. Every place has one, right? But room 12 felt different. It felt deliberate. I'll never forget that night. Sometimes I'd swear I saw fleeting shadows dance across the window. Just tricks of the light, I told myself, the reflection of passing headlights on the highway. My fatigue played tricks on me often on the road. Long hauls, endless miles, it messes with your perception, but these shadows started to feel more solid, more insistent. A growing, unsettling awareness began to creep in. There was genuinely something amiss with room 12. It wasn't just a light, it was a presence. I found myself subconsciously parking my rig in a spot that offered a direct, unobstructed view of room 12. It became a ritual, an unspoken compulsion. An inexplicable pull drew my eyes to that window every time. Even when no figure was visible, I felt a distinct sense of being watched, a prickling on my neck. The light seemed to pulse faintly some nights, almost breathing. It was unsettling, like an eye that never closed, always observing the desolate stretch of highway. Then the shadows started to coalesce, not just fleeting glimpses, but a distinct silhouette. It was too tall, too gaunt, too still to be human. It was just a shape at first, barely perceptible. But with each stop, it became clearer, sharper, like a photograph slowly developing in the darkroom of my mind. Its stillness was the most unnerving part. No shifting, no fidgeting, just an unwavering, unblinking presence. It seemed to be observing my every move, my every arrival. I tried to rationalize it. a mannequin, a coat rack, but the feeling of being watched was too strong, too personal to be a mere inanimate object. One particularly foggy night, the figure was undeniable. It filled the window, its form a stark contrast against the internal light. My blood ran cold. That night, the figure made a slow, deliberate gesture, a curling finger, barely visible, subtly beckoning me. It wasn't a trick of the light. This happened to me. A visceral chill shot through my bones, colder than any winter night on the road. My heart pounded against my ribs. I knew then this was no human. I scrambled away from my window, pulling the curtains shut as if that could sever the connection. But the image of that beckoning finger was seared into my mind. After that night, strange phenomena began in my own room. Sudden cold spots would appear, chilling me to the bone even with the heater on full blast. Faint whispers like dry leaves rustling would drift from the corners of the room. I couldn't make out words, but the sound itself was deeply unsettling. A persistent feeling of an ancient, malevolent presence radiated from room 12. It was like a silent hum, a constant pressure in the air. I tried to dismiss it as sleep deprivation, the stress of the road, but the cold, the whispers, the feeling they were too real, too consistent. My attempts to casually question Silas about room 12 were met with evasiveness. His eyes would dart away, his usual gruffness replaced by a palpable unease. Just a long-term booking, he'd mumble, or maintenance, always something. His excuses were flimsy, his discomfort obvious. It confirmed my suspicions. Something dark resided within room 12. Silas knew it. The way he avoided the subject, the way his hand trembled when he spoke, he was terrified. The urge to know, to understand, became irresistible. It was a terrifying pull, a morbid curiosity that overshadowed my fear. I had to see it again. Late one night, I found myself standing at my window again, curtains pulled back. My breath hitched. The figure was there, clearer than ever. This wasn't a silhouette, this was a form, a gaunt, skeletal frame, impossibly tall, its head tilted, as if studying me with an unseen gaze. We were locked in a silent, desperate stare-down. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against the silence of the night. It felt like an eternity. Then it moved, slowly, deliberately. It pressed against the glass, its true, horrifying form revealed. It wasn't human, it was ancient evil. Its skin was like dried parchment stretched over bone, its eyes sunken pits of blackness. It didn't just beckon, it demanded. This happened to me. Its mouth, a jagged tear in its face, didn't move, yet I heard its voice in my mind. A cold, ancient whisper promising eternal occupancy. It desired to claim me, to make me its next permanent occupant, another unblinking light in its desolate facade. I understood then. I broke free from its grip by sheer force of will, a primal scream trapped in my throat. I stumbled backward, away from the window, away from the terror. I fled that motel, leaving my key on the counter, not caring about the payment. I drove through the night, the image of that face burned into my memory. I changed my routes forever. The roadside rest is a place I'll never see again, but the chilling memory, it never truly faded. The unsettling question of what truly followed me out, what clung to the memory, remains. Did I escape, or did it merely choose to wait? Sometimes, when I'm alone in my cab, I swear I see a flicker of an unblinking light in my peripheral vision. Just a trick of the road, I tell myself. But the cold spots still appear, even miles from that desolate motel. The faint whispers, too, they follow me, a constant reminder of what I saw. The ancient presence, it never left me. Room 12, unblinking light still shines in my mind, a beacon of malevolence that found its way into my soul. Every time I see a light left on in an empty building, a shiver runs down my spine. I know what can lurk behind those unblinking eyes. I try to forget, but the image of that curling finger, that demanding gaze, it's etched into my very being. This happened to me. I often wonder about Silas, the motel owner. Did he ever truly escape, or is he just another unblinking light, forever bound to room 12? The road is a lonely place full of forgotten corners and hidden horrors, and room 12 at the roadside rest is one I'll never forget. It taught me that some lights aren't meant to illuminate but to lure, to trap, to claim, and some eyes once opened can never truly close. The memory of that ancient evil, its silent demands, it's a constant companion now, a shadow in my rearview mirror, a whisper in the wind. I'll never stop driving, never stop running, but I know deep down that room 12 is still there, its lights still on, waiting for its next occupant. And sometimes when the night is darkest and the road is long, I feel that inexplicable pull again, that morbid curiosity, beckoning me back. But I resist. I drive faster, turn up the music, anything to drown out the silent call of the unblinking light. I'll never go back. But the question haunts me still, what truly followed me out, and what if one night I can't resist that pull anymore? This happened to me. I'll never forget that night. The road ahead stretches out, endless and dark, but the darkest stretch is always behind me, where room 12 still burns, an unblinking eye in the night. It waits. And sometimes I hear a whisper carried on the wind, a name that isn't mine but feels like it could be, a name for the next permanent occupant. I keep driving, chasing the dawn, hoping the light will banish the shadows. But I know some shadows are too deep, too old to ever truly fade. The roadside rest is a memory, a nightmare, but room 12, its light unblinking, is a promise of a home I never wanted, a rest I'll never find. And so I drive, forever on the run from a place that called to me, from an entity that wanted me, from the motel room's unblinking light. Story 4, this happened to me and I'll never forget it. We arrived at the brightly colored Happy Trails Motel, drawn by its advertised indoor playplace. My husband Mark, our curious 4-year-old Leo, and I anticipated a relaxing family weekend. Leo instantly fell in love with the playplace. It was a vibrant, multi-level maze of tubes, slides, and nets, a child's paradise. He wasted no time, disappearing into its colorful depths, his joyful shouts echoing through the quiet lobby. Soon, Leo started talking about a new friend he'd made in the playplace. "He's very quiet, Mommy," Leo told me over dinner, his eyes sparkling. We smiled, dismissing it as typical imaginative play for a 4-year-old. We encouraged his stories, thinking it was sweet. "What's your friend's name?" Mark asked. Leo just shrugged. "He doesn't have a name, he just plays." It seemed innocent enough, just a vivid imagination at work. Leo spent hours in that playplace. Every time he emerged, he'd have a new anecdote about his quiet companion, the friend who was becoming a constant presence in his play, always there, always observing. His descriptions became more specific. "He's always in the shadows, Mommy," Leo confided one evening, his voice a hushed whisper. "He likes the dark parts." A faint shiver traced my spine, but I brushed it off. Mark and I exchanged uneasy glances. It wasn't the usual boisterous friend kids invent. This one sounded secretive. Still, we told ourselves it was just Leo's creative mind, nothing to worry about. Leo's interactions with his unseen playmate grew more frequent. He'd spend long stretches of time in the playplace, sometimes just sitting, talking to an empty corner, completely absorbed. He'd tell us the friend taught him new games, always involving hide-and-seek in the darkest tunnels. "He's very good at hiding," Leo would say, a strange pride in his voice. Our unease deepened. The details became unsettling. "My friend doesn't like the sun, Mommy. He likes the cool, quiet places." I started to imagine a pale, silent figure lurking just beyond Leo's sight, just beyond mine. There was a new reverence in Leo's tone when he spoke of the friend, a quiet respect that felt out of place for a child his age. It was as if he was speaking of an elder or someone with authority. Mark tried to joke, maybe your friend needs a name, like Shadowy Steve. Leo's face darkened instantly. No, he doesn't like names, he just is. The sudden defensiveness was alarming. I once saw Leo whispering intently into a dark, narrow tunnel. His small body was hunched, as if sharing a profound secret. No sound came back, yet he nodded, as if receiving a response. My friend showed me a new way, Leo announced proudly, leading me through a tricky, less used section of the playplace. It felt colder, somehow, than the rest of the structure. A chilling feeling started to settle in. This wasn't just imaginary. The way he spoke, the places he went, the subtle changes in his demeanor, it all felt too real, too unsettling. Leo became unusually possessive of certain playplace areas, particularly a secluded, dark corner deep within the tubes. He'd glare if other children approached it. He insisted on playing alone in specific sections, shooing away other kids with a surprising assertiveness. "This is my friend's place," he'd declare, his voice firm. Sometimes he'd emerge from the playplace withdrawn, quiet, and unusually pale. He'd sit silently, staring into space as if processing something profound and disturbing. Other times, he'd be unusually agitated, almost frantic. He'd run around the motel room, his eyes wide, talking to himself in hushed, rapid tones we couldn't quite decipher. We started noticing small, unexplained scratches on his arms and legs. When asked, he'd simply shrug. My friend and I were playing rough. It didn't sound like Leo. "Are you sure you're not falling, sweetie?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "No, Mommy, my friend just likes to play tag," he replied, avoiding my gaze, a strange glint in his eye. He began to resist leaving the playplace. When we'd call him for dinner, he'd stall, beg for 5 more minutes, or simply ignore us, lost in his silent game. Sometimes his eyes seemed distant, unfocused, as if looking through us to something only he could perceive. It was like a mask had fallen over our son's joyful face. He developed a strange, knowing smirk at times, especially when we talked about leaving the motel. It was a look that didn't belong on a 4-year-old's face. Our growing sense of unease turned into a cold dread. The cheerful playplace, once a source of joy, now felt like a sinister trap, slowly claiming our son. Small, unsettling incidents began. We found Leo's favorite toy car, left in the playplace, moved to a different, high-up ledge overnight. It was too high for Leo to reach. A strange, inexplicable chill lingered in certain tunnels, even though the motel's heating was on full blast. It felt like a pocket of unnatural cold, refusing to dissipate. One night, after everyone was asleep, I swore I heard a faint, distorted whisper emanating from the direction of the playplace. It wasn't Leo's voice, nor Mark's. Mark, skeptical, checked the motel's small CCTV monitor for the playplace. Nothing. Just the empty, colorful structure, still and silent under the dim nightlights, or so it seemed. We cautiously brought up the chill to the motel staff. They just shrugged, blaming an old ventilation system. "It's always a bit drafty in there," the receptionist said, unconcerned. Leo, however, had an explanation. "My friend likes to play tricks on you, Mommy," he giggled, a hollow, unfamiliar sound. "He thinks it's funny when you look for things." Another time, a small plastic ball was found perfectly balanced on the very top of a tall, thin net pillar. It would have taken immense effort, or no physical effort at all, to place it there. I caught a fleeting glimpse of something dark, a wavering shadow in my peripheral vision near the playplace entrance. When I turned, it was gone, just my imagination, I hoped. The air in the playplace felt heavy, oppressive, even when empty. It was like walking into a thick, unseen presence, a suffocating silence that pressed down on my chest. The imaginary friend was no longer a playful figment. It was a terrifying reality, a malevolent entity that had taken root in our son's mind and perhaps in the playplace itself. Leo's behavior escalated dramatically. He started having nightmares, screaming out in his sleep, thrashing against unseen forces. "No, stay longer," he'd cry, tears streaming. He'd talk in his sleep about the friend wanting him to stay longer, about secrets and games only they knew. His words were slurred, but the intent was horrifyingly clear. He became openly defiant when we tried to limit his time in the playplace. Our sweet boy was gone, replaced by a child filled with a strange, dark anger. He threw violent tantrums, screaming and kicking, demanding to go back to his friend. His voice, usually so cheerful, now held an unnerving, guttural edge. His behavior was completely unlike our gentle, loving boy. It was as if something alien had taken root, slowly twisting his innocence into something dark and sinister. Filled with a bone-chilling dread, I decided to secretly observe Leo in the playplace. I had to know what was happening, even if I feared what I might see. Through a small gap in the netting, I saw him. Leo was talking, gesturing not to empty space but to a wavering, shadowy distortion in the air, a ripple of darkness. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A presence. It shifted, pulsed, a deeper shadow within the existing shadows, reacting to Leo's words. Then, the horror, the friend seemed to guide Leo's hand, making him try to lure another small child, no older than 3, into a dark, secluded tunnel. Leo's eyes were vacant. An intense, malevolent coldness washed over me, a visceral understanding of true evil. This wasn't imaginary. This was real, and it was preying on my son. I burst into the playplace, screaming, grabbing a terrified Leo. He shrieked, a sound of pure agony, but his eyes weren't on me. They were fixed on something behind me. He wasn't screaming at me. He was screaming at the shadowy presence I could now faintly perceive retreating into the deeper recesses of the structure, a ripple of darkness disappearing. We fled the motel that night, abandoning our belongings, not caring about anything but getting Leo away. The drive home was a blur of fear and silent tears. Leo slowly recovered, but the experience left a permanent mark. He never spoke of his friend again, but sometimes his eyes still hold a distant, haunted look. I'm left with the horrifying realization that the cheerful playplace was a hunting ground, and the unsettling thought that its shadow friend might still be waiting, or worse, might have found a way to follow us home. Story 5. I'll never forget the day I received the letter. My great-uncle Silas, a man I barely knew, had passed away mysteriously. He'd left me everything, including the remote, dilapidated Blackwood Motel. It was a strange mix of hope for a new beginning and an unsettling sense of unease. The drive to the motel was long and isolated, through dense, ancient woods. The air grew heavy, and the trees seemed to close in, their branches like skeletal fingers. I remember the feeling of being watched, even before I arrived at the grim, fading sign of the Blackwood Motel. The motel itself was worse than I'd imagined. Peeling paint, broken windows, and an eerie silence hung over the place. Each step on the cracked asphalt felt like an intrusion. This happened to me. The very air felt thick with forgotten stories and a palpable sense of decay. Stepping into the lobby, the dust was so thick it seemed to absorb all sound. An old, musty smell like forgotten secrets and damp earth filled my lungs. I tried to shake off the growing dread, telling myself it was just the natural atmosphere of an abandoned place, but it clung to me. I spent the first few days simply trying to air the place out, to bring some light into its dark corners. Yet, even with the windows open, a pervasive chill remained. I felt a constant, prickling sensation on my neck, as if an unseen presence was always just behind me, observing my every move. Silas's office was the last place I dared to tackle. It was a chaotic mess of papers, books, and strange curios. This happened to me. I felt a strange reluctance to touch anything, as if disturbing his belongings would awaken something best left undisturbed. My hands trembled as I began to sort. Behind a loose floorboard, beneath a stack of old ledgers, my fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. It was a small, ornate lockbox. My heart pounded. I knew instinctively this was more than just a place for valuables. This was Silas's secret. Inside the lockbox, nestled on a faded velvet lining, was a single, leather-bound journal. Its cover was smooth, almost oily to the touch, and it had no title. Just a series of faded, unfamiliar symbols etched into the spine. A profound sense of dread washed over me. I opened the journal, its pages brittle with age. Silas's handwriting, initially neat, became increasingly erratic, scrawled across the pages like desperate pleas. The first entries were cryptic, referencing the whispers and a growing hunger within the motel's walls. My blood ran cold. He wrote about the whispers in the walls, a soft, insidious murmur that promised things, demanded things. He described them as a constant companion, twisting his thoughts. I remembered the faint sounds I'd dismissed, and a shiver traced its way down my spine. Then came the references to hungry rooms, not just empty rooms, but rooms that actively sought sustenance. He listed them by number, underlined repeatedly with frantic warnings. I recognized some of the numbers. They were the ones I'd felt a strange aversion to. The journal detailed disappearances. Not just guests leaving without a trace, but vanishing from specific rooms, identified only by number and date. No names, just empty spaces where people once were. This happened to me. I felt a chilling connection to the motel's past. Silas's entries grew more frantic, the ink pressed so hard it almost tore the paper. He spoke of appeasing something, of cycles and offerings. It wasn't just a record. It was a desperate confession, a man wrestling with an unspeakable horror. The journal wasn't just history, it was a living testament to an ongoing terror. I realized Silas hadn't just owned a motel, he had been its custodian, its prisoner. And now the journal lay in my hands, implicating me in its dark legacy. I couldn't put it down. A profound chill settled over me, deeper than any draft. It was the chill of understanding, of realizing the motel wasn't just dilapidated, it was cursed. The silence of the building now felt oppressive, watching me, waiting for me to finish reading. I was trapped. That night, after reading Silas's chilling words, the first minor incident occurred. A door creaked open down the hallway, slowly, deliberately. I froze, my heart hammering. I tried to dismiss it, blaming old hinges, but the sound was too precise, too intentional. I told myself it was just the wind, the old building settling, but there was no wind that night, and the motel had been silent for days. My rational mind wrestled with the unsettling reality. This happened to me, the journal's words echoed in my mind. Faint, almost imperceptible sounds began to emanate from empty rooms. A soft scratching, a muffled thud. I'd creep down the hall, flashlight in hand, to find nothing. Each time the room was empty, undisturbed, yet the sounds persisted just beyond my reach. I'd check the rooms one by one, expecting to find a broken pipe or a trapped animal, but there was never anything. Just dust, cobwebs, and that pervasive, heavy silence that seemed to swallow all sound. It was as if the motel itself was playing tricks on me. Then came the cold spots, patches of air, intensely frigid, that would appear and disappear without warning. They weren't near windows or vents, they just materialized like invisible pockets of ice. Standing in one felt like being plunged into a grave. I tried to rationalize it as drafts, faulty insulation, but the cold was too localized, too sharp. It felt unnatural, like a presence was passing through, leaving a lingering chill in its wake. The journal's words about hungry rooms began to make terrifying sense. Objects in my own room started to move. A book I'd left on the nightstand would be on the floor. My keys, placed carefully by the door, would be on the dresser. Small, insidious shifts that chipped away at my sanity, making me doubt my own memory. I started leaving things in specific, unusual places just to test myself, but the shifts continued. This happened to me. I began to wonder if I was losing my mind, if the isolation and the journal were finally breaking me. The motel was playing a cruel game. Fleeting shadows danced in my peripheral vision. A flicker at the end of the hall, a movement in the darkened corners of my room. When I turned, there was nothing, just the oppressive gloom. My eyes strained, searching for what wasn't there or what didn't want to be seen. The minor incidents were no longer dismissible. They were a prelude, a slow tightening of the noose. The motel was alive, and it was becoming more active, more insistent. The unease I felt upon arrival had curdled into a palpable, constant dread. Then the disturbances escalated sharply. One night, a blood-curdling scream tore through the silence. It sounded like it came from directly below me, from the foundations of the motel. I shot upright in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. I grabbed my flashlight, my hands shaking so violently I could barely hold it steady. I searched every room, every corner, my breath catching in my throat. Nothing, just the echoing silence, more terrifying than the scream itself. This happened to me. I was truly alone. Objects didn't just move now, they vanished for hours, only to reappear in impossible places. My keys once turned up in the freezer. My toothbrush was found in a shoe. It was a deliberate torment designed to strip away my grasp on reality. The pervasive sense of being watched intensified. It felt like eyes were on me constantly, in every reflection, every shadow. I started talking to myself just to break the silence, just to feel less alone in the vast, malevolent building. Silas's journal entries, once frantic, now felt like a mirror. His descriptions of the motel's moods, its hunger, were no longer abstract. They were my reality. The pages seemed to vibrate with the same terror I felt every waking moment. He wrote more explicitly about appeasing the entity, about a tax the motel demanded. The disappearances weren't random, they were part of a terrifying, ancient cycle. My stomach churned with a horrifying realization of what that meant. The whispers became clearer, more insistent. They weren't just background noise anymore, they were seductive, promising release, demanding attention. I heard my name distorted from empty rooms. This happened to me, it was calling me. Nightmares became my only escape, and they were worse than reality. Vivid, visceral dreams of being chased through endless, dark hallways, of unseen hands grabbing at me, of screaming guests trapped in hungry rooms. Sleep offered no peace. My sanity frayed. I spoke aloud to the empty rooms, pleading, bargaining. I started to believe the motel understood that it was a living, malevolent entity. The lines between what was real and what was imagined blurred irrevocably. I was breaking. The Blackwood Motel was not just a building. It was a hungry, ancient organism, and I was caught in its grasp. Every creak, every shadow, every cold spot was a manifestation of its malevolent will. It was alive, and it wanted something from me. Deeper in the journal, Silas detailed his desperate attempts to contain the force. He spoke of specific rituals, of symbols drawn in blood, of a horrifying truce he had forged. This was not just a record, it was a guidebook to my own damnation. He listed the active rooms, the ones most prone to the entity's influence. Room 13, Room 27, Room 34. These were the rooms where the whispers were loudest, the cold spots most intense. I made a mental note, a desperate attempt to protect myself. Silas described the methods he used to temporarily seal these rooms, crude, desperate attempts with salt, iron, and specific incantations. He was a prisoner, bound to the motel, forced to perform these grim duties to keep the entity at bay. The disappearances weren't just unfortunate events, they were sacrifices. The motel demanded a tithe to remain dormant, to keep its insatiable hunger from consuming everything. Silas had been feeding it, and now I understood it was my turn. The journal ended abruptly with a final, chilling entry about the entity stirring. Silas knew his time was up. He'd bought me time, a desperate reprieve, but the cycle was coming. The heavy weight of his legacy settled upon my shoulders. Then a car pulled up, a new guest. He checked into room 27, one of the active rooms. My blood ran cold. This happened to me. I watched him walk down the hall, a lamb to the slaughter, knowing I was powerless to stop what was coming. My paranoia spiked. Every shadow seemed to stretch and writhe. I saw fleeting glimpses of movement in the corners of my vision, not just shadows, but something denser, darker. The motel was excited, anticipating its next meal. From room 27 I heard it, a low, guttural breathing like something immense and ancient struggling for air. It was deep, resonating through the very foundations of the motel. The whispers from the walls were now a chorus, a hungry chant. I frantically searched Silas's office again, desperate for any last clue. Tucked beneath a loose board in his desk, I found it, a single, folded note, his handwriting almost unrecognizable. My hands trembled as I opened it. The note contained his final, desperate warning: it's awake again. Don't let it touch you. Don't let it leave. The words were a chill wind, sealing my fate. Silas had known, and now I knew too. The entity was free, and it wanted me next. The next morning, room 27 was empty. The bed was undisturbed, the guest's belongings gone. Only a faint, sickly, sweet scent lingered in the air. He was gone, absorbed. The cycle had claimed another, and the motel felt satisfied. My heart sank with dread. I knew what I had to do. Armed with Silas's journal, I descended into the motel's damp, earth-floored basement, towards the source of the whispers, towards the hungry core. This happened to me. I confronted the ancient, parasitic entity connected to the foundations. It was amorphous, a pulsating mass of shadow and raw hunger, anchored deep within the earth. A terrifying struggle ensued. I realized Silas's containment was merely a temporary truce. The entity now saw me, understood me, and it wanted me to continue its feed. I managed to temporarily trap it, using Silas's symbols and the last of my will. A hollow victory. The motel pulsed around me, a living prison. I was bound now, the new custodian, the new warden. I had stepped into Silas's shoes. His desperate legacy was mine. I update the journal now, my handwriting mirroring Silas's, chronicling the whispers, the cold spots, the hunger. I await the next terrifying cycle, a recluse in my own haunted motel. This happened to me. The Blackwood Motel's dark legacy continues, and I am its unwilling keeper.